The Gnome Foundation Board of Directors met in secret to remove an elected board member without anyone knowing about it. And they told nobody, not a single member of the Gnome Foundation, for 2 months. This is absolutely insane. This news broke over the weekend. The Lunduk Journal posted an article and published an article about it on Sunday. I would have published it sooner, but I tried in vain to get anyone from the Gnome Foundation to go on the record about what the heck is going on here. Of course, no one from the Gnome Foundation Board of Directors, from their Code of Conduct Committee, which is involved, you'll find that out in a moment, no one would go on the record. No one would make a comment. No one would answer any questions. It was total secrecy, no transparency, as usual with the Gnome Foundation. Now, before I read this article to you, and I have a whole lot of extra things I want to say in addition to what's in the article, I want to make it very clear why this needs to be covered. Because the Gnome Foundation, Gnome as a whole, the whole software suite, the desktop environment, and so many of the pieces of software that goes along with it, it is quite possibly one of the most important pieces of free and open source software out there. Even if you, I, or other people don't use GNOME as our desktop environment, the underpinnings of GNOME power a huge amount of Linux, BSD, and other free and open source software, and GNOME is in use as the default desktop environment for Red Hat, and Canonical, and Oracle, and so much of big tech. A huge amount of money, billions of dollars, flows around the computer industry using GNOME and related software. So what happens with GNOME has a tremendous impact on the entire computer industry, even if people don't really want to realize the tremendous impact that it could have. So I'm going to read this article to you now. You can also read it over at lunduk.locals.com, which is where, of course, you can read all of the articles that the Lunduk Journal publishes. Let's dive in here. The chaos at the Gnome Foundation continues as it is revealed that an elected Gnome board member, was forced out in a secret meeting held 2 months ago, but withheld from the public until now. As you may remember, GNOME recently announced that they were in dire financial circumstances, followed immediately by the resignation of their executive director, who had only been on the job for 9 months with almost nothing to show for her time. Now, the GNOME Foundation board has announced that they have removed one of their recently elected board members in a special meeting, their words, held on May 17th. Yet this fact was kept secret until July 17th, 2 months later, when they made the following statement. And I should say that they made this statement in the weirdest way possible. I'm going to read you the entire statement. They posted it to their forum and nowhere else. So the GNOME forum was the only place they made this statement. They posted it from a brand new created account called Gnome Foundation that no one had ever used before. It was literally just created hours before they made this post. So for about a day, no one could figure out if this was real or not, because it was made by a brand new, non-blessed account. No one could corroborate this story for the first 24 to 48 hours that it was out there. It was absolutely insane. Here's the entire statement. The Gnome Foundation board voted to remove Sonny Peers as a member of the board of directors for cause at a special meeting on May 17th, 2024, following the procedure outlined in the GNOME bylaws to remove him from all committees. Effective May 25th, 2024, his seat is now vacant, and in accordance with the bylaws, will be filled for the remainder of its term by an appointment made by the board. A code of conduct complaint was also made against Sonny Peers. The foundation is engaged in a mediation process with him, which is still ongoing, so we are unable to share more information at this time. I want to point something out here. So he was ousted as an elected official of GNOME, was ousted by his peers within the board, and they are going to replace him with someone that they choose that nobody elected, nobody voted for. I don't know. It raises a lot of red flags. Let's continue here. Sonny Peers was first elected less than a year ago and was forced out of his seat on the Nome board unexpectedly. Why? That information is not provided. In fact, the meeting minutes for this May 17th special meeting are incredibly vague, providing almost zero information, almost total secrecy about the reason for this board member being forced out of the Nome Foundation. In fact, here's a screenshot. For those of you listening to the audio podcast version, go check out the article over at lunduke.locals.com so you can follow along with all the screenshots here. This is a screenshot of the meeting minutes. Now, these are the meeting minutes for the May 17th, quote, special meeting. These meeting minutes were posted immediately prior, like right then to, or immediately after, real close, within minutes of the announcement of Sonny Peers being ejected, right? They were all done in the same time frame. I'm going to read part of the meeting minutes to you now, the only relevant part, and you can decide whether or not this actually answers anything. The agenda, consisting of 2 committee reports to be heard and considered in executive session, was presented. The proposed agenda was approved without objection. The acting chair moved to enter executive session to hear 2 committee reports regarding a personnel issue without objection. The board exited executive session. 1 resolution was approved with amendments. That's the entire thing. There's a few other bits of text on the meeting minutes, but nothing relating to what they talked about. Now, if you're wondering, what the heck is an executive session? An executive session is a way of saying we're going to meet in secret, not tell anyone what we're talking about, not document it in any way so you can never find out what we're talking about, make a vote, and then implement it, and we don't have to be responsible or accountable to the people that elected us. That's what executive session means. So they did this entirely in secret, completely 100%. So here's the crazy thing. This forced removal of Sonny Peers was not limited to the seat on the Nome board. The Nome accounts for Sonny Peers have all seemingly been blocked or banned, including source control. Here's a screenshot of the GitLab Nome account for Sonny Peers. He is a blocked user. This is like that across all of the Nome properties, the forum, the chat servers, all of it, he's blocked everywhere. So this elected official is blocked everywhere. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So let's dive into this here. So who is Sonny Peers? Well, there are multiple things which makes this incident extremely peculiar, not least of which is the fact that Sonny Peers is one of the most effective and prominent members of the Nome project. This isn't just some random person that popped up out of nowhere, right? He is the creator of the Nome Workbench piece of software, is the creator and leader of that project, and one of the orchestrators of the €1 million Sovereign Tech Fund grant from late last year, which coincidentally is one of the only pieces of positive news from Nome in quite some time. While there have been some issues relating to it, Sonny Peers was a critical part of all of this. In fact, if you were to create a list of the 5 most important, influential, and effective people within Nome, people that actually moved the project forward, garnered together significant funding, made projects, did coding, really organized things, Sonny Peers would make that list. Easily make that list. Heck, he might make top 3. So this is pretty wild. And according to a July 21st statement from Sonny Peers, published just over the weekend, his ousting from the Nome board was a shock to him. Quote, "I am no longer a member of the board of directors of the Nome Foundation since May of 2024, verifying what we've previously heard. The process and decision shocked me. I know people are looking for answers, but I want to protect people involved and the project/foundation. It was never an interpersonal conflict for me." Well, while we can read between the lines on some of this statement, there are very few details here, certainly nothing verifiable, about what exactly transpired. So after this news began to spread within the Nome world, and after the Lunduke Journal reached out to everyone for comment, I reached out to the Nome Foundation president, Robert McQueen. I reached out to the entire Nome Foundation board. I reached out to the Nome Foundation Code of Conduct Committee. I reached out to Sonny Peers. I reached out to so many people. But after I reached out to the Gnome Foundation president, Robert McQueen was forced to make a public statement. So he made this statement a few hours after I reached out to him. Quote, "This has also been an unprecedented situation for the foundation. The directors have met 15 to 16 times this year so far already and directed a great deal of time and attention into making this decision and trying to find the least worst outcomes, considering our legal and moral obligations to the community, the staff, and the foundation obligations which have sometimes felt in tension." Least worst outcomes? Legal and moral obligations? So a secret vote to oust an elected official, followed by keeping it a secret from the voters who voted for that person. How is that fulfilling some sort of moral obligation? This is a fascinating statement to me. And while we're not getting many details from Gnome about why they ousted an elected board member, the words chosen raise many, many additional questions. I'm going to continue with his statement here. Quote, "Regarding the board decision, whilst the board did receive a report from the Code of Conduct Committee, removal of a director is a separate process as set out in the bylaws and solely at the authority of the board. The board considered it separately and independently as we are required to do and made our own autonomous decision by a significant majority. We took outside legal advice on the situation and the process at multiple points, and it was duly followed. For the purposes of limiting legal liability, that advice also included making the announcement very terse and factual. I appreciate this is at tension with the transparency that the community would hope to see, but directors are also obligated to look after the foundation's legal requirements and financial interests." What? Now, we know that the Gnome Foundation Code of Conduct Committee was involved in some way. And according to that Code of Conduct Committee, there were only 2 incidents which were actionable, right? So based on their reporting, which is incredibly vague, and I link to it and screenshot it here as well, very vague, very secretive reporting. But that incident would be one of the 2 items listed in this report. And I'm just going to read it to you here. So since January of 2024, the committee has received a total of 6 reports by 6 different people. Of these, 2 incidents were determined to be actionable by the committee and were further resolved during the reporting period. The first, one incident required a notification of inappropriate behavior with no further consequences. Okay, well, that's probably not it, considering we're talking about mediation and legal liability. So that's probably not what we're talking about here. So the second one incident resulted in the Code of Conduct Committee recommending a ban, which is now in effect. Okay, so this clearly is that. Pursuant to the foundation bylaws, the committee also recommended to the board of directors the consequence of removal of the reported individual's foundation membership status. The later consequence was considered and approved by the board, but has not yet been implemented. Now, this Code of Conduct Committee report was, what's crazy about this is the Code of Conduct Committee report that says that this was not yet implemented, that this individual was not yet banned. And they're clearly talking about Sonny Piers here because that's the only one in the report that would line up. That means that the Code of Conduct Committee was actually lying here, because when they wrote this report after the May 17th and May 25th dates, where Sonny Piers was completely ejected from the project, was out of the board completely, and his board seat was vacated. So that had in fact been implemented, because this report came after that, but before the announcement was made, which means that the Code of Conduct Committee of the Gnome Foundation was knowingly lying to the entire membership of the Gnome Foundation on behalf of the members of the Gnome Foundation Board of Directors who had ousted one of their own elected board members in secret. That is crazy. So, but in addition, there's no names and no details and complete secrecy here, right? I mean, we can start to piece a few things together like what we just did, because they have had to make some statements. But holy heavens, This is ridiculous. Oh my word. Continuing. Likewise, outside legal counsel was sought by the Noam Foundation on whatever this matter was, which we don't know. We don't know what the matter was. And why did the Noam Foundation keep all of this secret for 2 months? 2 months of keeping it secret. Their statement on the matter, I'm sorry, but these statements are weak. They are weak and dishonest. Holy heavens. I'm going to continue. Here's another paragraph from the statement from Robert McQueen, the Noam Foundation president. Regarding the timing, the previous board was intentionally refraining from announcements while we made arrangements for mediation mentioned in the announcement. Okay. Subsequently, during the election period, we did not want to appear to be interfering in the election, which runs autonomously with its own timeline. And since the election, the new board has only had its first official meeting. I duly notified with quorum able to make votes to approve this announcement on Wednesday before GWODEC. Okay, so to be clear, what this means. The Noam Foundation subverted the votes of the Noam Foundation members by ousting an elected board member in secret. And the reason they didn't tell anyone about it for 2 months is that they were making mediation arrangements, which apparently take 2 months to do, and you can't possibly tell someone that you've vacated an elected position while you do that. And they only just now felt the need to tell people what they had done because the people would find out anyway at their annual conference. So GWODEC happened this last weekend. They made this announcement because people were going to be attending in person and virtually the GNOME User and Developer Conference, known as GWODEC, their big GNOME yearly conference. Part of that is that they bring together, either in person or virtually, all of the GNOME Foundation board members for an annual meeting. And everyone gets a chance to ask questions. Well, Sonny Peers, the board member who was ousted, was clearly not going to be there. People were going to ask questions. People were going to figure out what happened. They were forced to tell people the truth because they were about to be found out. Yeah. That's right. The only reason that the Noam Foundation, by their own admission, stopped lying to the GNOME members is because they were about to be found out anyway. Seriously. I'll be honest here. I don't buy any of their statements. I just don't buy it. The GNOME Foundation statements quite simply do not hold water. They lied a lot in here. And when they didn't lie, they were just simply not telling any information. They were keeping things secret. I have so many questions. These events raise so many questions and concerns regarding the Noam Foundation. I'm just going to list a few of them to you, just a few. I've got 6 of them here that I would like answered, and realistically, there's a lot more. First, why was Sonny Peers ousted from his elected seat at the Noam Foundation board? Why? Right? I just would like to know why. If there are certain details that can't be told because of a lawsuit, say so. Say so. Say there's a lawsuit. I will then go look up the lawsuit and find out for myself. But say so. If you don't want to make a statement about it, I understand. If there's not a lawsuit going on, right, we need to know at least something. We need to know something. He was an elected official. Why was he ousted? Give us some sort of vague general idea here. Heavens to Betsy. Number 2, why was this action done entirely behind closed doors with absolutely zero documentation regarding this vote? Who on the Noam Foundation voted for or against Sonny Peers being ousted? According to the statement, it was not a unanimous vote, but it was close to it, which, judging by the total size of the Noam Foundation boards, means there was probably one person that objected. We can just guess. Who was that, right? This is, I'm sorry, this is an elected position within an open source and free software organization. Transparency is critical. If you don't have transparency, you don't have it. You don't have it, you get rid of it, right? That's what this is all about here. Number 3, why was this undocumented vote in this special meeting kept secret for 2 months? What? Why was it kept secret? Was there going to be a riot in the streets if people knew that you'd taken an action? If you can't tell people what happened 2 months ago, why is it okay now? Why is it okay to tell people now? What changed? It doesn't appear that anything has changed between then and now, at least not based on the information we have. So why was this kept secret for 2 months? And in fact, I have some theories about this, but they're just theories, and I'll go into the timeline of events here in a moment. Number 4, why does Nome only feel the need to tell people what actions they take in secret when their secret activities are on the verge of being discovered, right? It's like, I don't know, it's like a kid who does something really naughty but won't tell their parents until, mom and dad are about to find out anyway. I better come clean so my punishment's not as hard. That's what this smells like. Why is that? Why is that? You are elected officials here. Come on. Just say so. Just write it down in the meeting minutes and publish them. Make a statement if you have to, but just do it. Be open and transparent about it. Heavens to Betsy. This is amateur hour here. Number 5, why was legal advice necessary? I mean, really, if the Nome Foundation is seeking legal advice because of relationships or actions or something related to people running the Nome Foundation, we need to know what. We need to know what. Any elected body where you have to seek legal advice because of the actions of the members of the elected body, the people who make those votes deserve to know. You know what? Don't tell me. Tell the people that voted for all of you. Tell them what's going on. Number 6. Does the ousting of Sonny Piers have anything to do with the other events happening within Nome during the same time period? The removal of the Nome Shaman executive director, the massive flop of the 5-year plan that was absolutely ridiculous. If you haven't looked at the 5-year plan thing, go look at it. The London Journal covered it in depth. It was absolutely insane. The most impressive thing about the Nome 5-year plan is that they plan to, I'm not joking, eventually create a PowerPoint slide talking about Nome. But they haven't yet. But they're thinking about it one day. They might create a PowerPoint slide about Nome. It's going to be tight. That literally is the most concrete thing. All the rest of it is all DEI mumbo jumbo without even any measurable results or anything. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Or does this have anything to do with the announcement of the financial difficulties that Nome has been facing? Does it have anything to do with any of these? Does it have anything to do with the issues relating to that $1 million Nome sovereign fund grant that was announced last year? What is going on? Does it have anything to do with anything we already know about, or is it something completely different? We deserve the answers to this. Well, now, will Nome answer any of these questions? If their past and current dedication to secrecy are any indication, probably not. Heck, Nome bans critical tech journalists from even asking questions on their forums. That's not a joke. I'm not the only one. It's insane. They do not respond to criticism. They do not respond to journalists. They just simply don't. I've been trying to. I literally, for the 9 months that Nome had their previous executive director in their office, tried to get them to answer a single question or make one comment on any story, which there have been many. They never did, not once. What they did do is ban me and other people who ask questions from their forums, block people everywhere. They just simply won't answer things. They're about as secretive and tight-lipped as you can get. I get more information out of the CIA. That's not a joke. I have gotten information out of the CIA than I have gotten out of the Nome Foundation. It's absolutely insane. So I want to provide you with some thoughts here. These are my thoughts. These are what I personally think here, because there's a lot of important bits here, and it requires a little bit of opining, just a little bit. If I, Lunduke, were a voting member of the Nome Foundation, I would find all of this deeply troubling. If the Nome Foundation can get rid of undesirable board members, 100% in secret, without ever, not once, giving justification and not even telling Nome voters that they even did it for multiple months, and only when they're about to get found out, then that means that the Nome members have absolutely no power within the foundation. Their votes, the votes of people within the Nome Foundation, simply do not matter. It does not matter. If you vote for someone, well, they're just going to be ousted if they're not wanted. And the Nome Foundation won't even tell you about it. They won't even tell you that they did it. Now, it should be noted that, again, the Lunduk Journal reached out to multiple people with questions and a request for comment on this story, including the entire Nome Foundation board, the Nome Foundation Code of Conduct Committee, everyone on both of those organizations, as well as Sonny Pierce. Now, several hours after reaching out, I want to reiterate this. Both Sonny Pierce and the Nome Foundation president posted statements outlining their as I outlined earlier in this article. They did not make any statement whatsoever until the Lunduk Journal poked them. Until the Lunduk Journal was like, hey, make a statement. This is not the first time that has happened. In fact, the current Nome Foundation annual report, they were not publishing it until the Lunduk Journal published an article and a podcast episode pointing out that the Nome Foundation is late publishing their annual report, and by a lot. And they're dodging questions, and they're just not being transparent. And then a few days later, they published a really hastily put together financial annual report that was like 6 pages long, 4 of which were just template pages, and it could have been put together in an hour, right? This is a regular ongoing thing with the Nome Foundation. The Lunduk Journal covers their shenanigans. They respond publicly in a way that doesn't really answer the questions, but clearly was prompted by the Lunduk Journal. But they never, ever actually interact with the Lunduk Journal. They never actually respond to questions. So yet, as of publishing this article, despite them clearly acting and reacting because of my coverage of their shenanigans, not one representative from Nome has directly responded to the Lunduk Journal. Not one, not in any way. And the public statements failed to answer any of the questions asked above anyway, right? They made statements, but they only raised more questions than they answered. Now, I want to repeat something here. Nome is a critically important piece of software, critically important. It is used by numerous prominent consumer-focused open source operating systems, as well as relied upon by all of the major Linux enterprise corporations. What happens to Nome can have a significant impact on the entire Linux, BSD, and open source ecosystem. That is just simply the fact of the matter. Even if you, I, or many other people don't use Nome desktop environment, it still has a tremendous impact. And what happens is important. And these extreme levels of secrecy within the Nome Foundation, coupled with this repeated chaos and the just nonstop barrage of total abject failures, raises significant concerns. This is going to have an effect across major enterprises, across community distributions, all sorts of things. Now, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot here. It can be hard to keep all of the chaos within Nome straight. So I've got a timeline for you here, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit of it now. But what's really handy about this timeline is that it's up there in the article. You can go check it out. I've got exact dates with links to all of the individual news items, right? So this is the events in this particular story and everything related to Nome over the last year. And it's kind of crazy. It's kind of bizarre. So last June of 2023, Sonny Pierce announced and then won his election to the Nome Foundation board. Right. So this was essentially a year ago. A year ago today, a year ago yesterday, Sonny Pierce won the election. The Nome Foundation then in October of last year hired Holly Million, a professional shaman, to be the new Nome executive director. Within a couple of weeks, Nome announced that they had received were going to receive a €1 million grant from the Sovereign Tech Fund, which was organized and managed in part, again, by Sonny Pierce. By February of this year, the Nome Foundation had an in-person board meeting, which included both Holly Million and Sonny Pierce. I've got a link to it here so you can go check out the picture for that, right? So you can see them all sitting in the same room. April 26th of this year, the Gnome Foundation announced a spending freeze due to dire financial circumstances. As they put it, they have hit the buffers and they could not spend any more money. They were running out of funds. So that was April 26th. On May 17th, right, just little over 2 weeks later, less than 3 weeks later, they held their secret special meeting where Sonny Piers was voted to be removed from the Gnome Foundation board. Now, that again was kept secret for 2 more months. By May 23rd, the Gnome Foundation, again, just a few days after that special meeting, after a few days after they ousted Sonny Piers, the Gnome Foundation announced their 5-year strategic plan, which consisted primarily of DEI policies, DEI and woke policies, and a complete lack of measurable goals. Are those items related? This was all happening within like 3 to 4 weeks of each other. The Gnome Foundation announced that, oh my gosh, they're out of money. They ousted Sonny Piers and announced their strategic plan, which was laughable. They claimed that they'd been working on their strategic plan for like half a year, but it could have, if you read it, go check out the article at Atlantic.locals.com. If you read it, it reads like it was put together in an hour in a slightly intoxicated afternoon. It is poorly written, incredibly short, poorly thought out, and mostly about DEI-related issues. It has nothing to do with GNOME software. It just doesn't, right? So was Sonny Piers' ousting, did that have anything to do with the 5-year plan? Did it have anything to do with them running out of money? What was going on here? And then again, 2 days after that 5-year plan was out, GNOME has officially documented that the Sonny Piers board seat was fully vacant, and again, kept secret until July 17th. And then on July 12th, just a few weeks ago, GNOME announced that their executive director, who had only been in the job for 9 months, was returning to be a shaman again. Excuse me. I find it funny. And then that was on July 12th. 5 days after that announcement, they announced that Sonny Piers had been removed in secret 2 months earlier. Again, this has all happened right back to back. So are these items related? And then 2 days after they announced that Sonny Piers had been removed 2 months earlier, GNOME holds their annual conference. Right? There's something up. I'm sorry, these are not all of these things happening. 1 or 2 of these things happening in a year. Oh man, that's just bad luck. Or, oh, that was bad planning. Someone made a mistake, whatever. All of these things happening back to back, right jammed into each other. No, there's a related thing going on here. There's something up here. You know, the spidey sense starts tingling. It's like, no, something's amiss. Something is distinctly amiss. Now, I have personal thoughts, right? I have personal theories. I'm not going to share those right now because the reality is those theories are nothing but theories. And I am extremely confident that as additional information comes to light, I will be able to vet which of those theories actually is true and which of them are just bad theories. I have lots of theories, but we're going to wait. We're going to try to get some more information out of someone. I would hope that the Gnome Foundation would come out and be less secretive and be less sneaky and lie a little bit less to their foundation members. Just a little bit would be nice. But I don't think that'll happen. Now, they held their annual conference, GWADEC, the GNOME User and Developer Conference. And over the weekend, I watched their annual meeting. They held an annual meeting. They live streamed it. You can go find it on their YouTube channel, unless they've taken it down, which they probably will because they hate transparency. But I watched it live, and they managed to avoid discussing any of this. They avoided the vast majority of these topics entirely. How did they avoid it? I couldn't tell you. If I would have been in the room, man, would I have asked a lot of questions. I would have probably been kicked out of the conference for being one of those pesky journalists asking those pesky questions, seeking the pesky truth. But no one seemed to care, at least not the people running the GNOME Foundation. So there we have it. here we are. What'll happen next? Who knows? More chaos, more disaster, more drama, more secrecy, more giant dirigible on fire crashing into buildings, probably. We're going to find out soon. Now, we can hope for the best. We can hope that GNOME rights the ship so that companies that rely on GNOME and Linux distributions and BSD distributions that rely on GNOME can have confidence in the development of the project and the leadership of the project going forward. But based on the last few months of secrecy, insanity, lies, and just crazy drama, I somehow doubt it. I mean, let's be honest. It's pretty crazy. And it only seems to be ramping up. If you look at that timeline, man, the frequency, the density, that waveform is condensing of crazy events happening within the GNOME world. So there you have it. Now, I'm hoping that other news outlets report on this, other tech news outlets report on this. My guess is they won't, or they will, but late, and they'll leave out a huge amount of critical information because that's what they do. But I want to thank all of the subscribers to the Lunduke Journal for making this sort of reporting possible. If you head over to lunduke.com or lunduke.locals.com, you can sign up for free. You can read the articles. You can listen to the shows. It's all fantastic. And if you want to support the work that the Lunduke Journal does, become a subscriber over there, monthly, yearly, lifetime, whatever. There's lots and lots of options. If you go to lunduke.com, there's a little link on how to subscribe, how to donate, how to support the show. There's even Bitcoin-y related options. It's absolutely fantastic. And I want to thank everyone who does. Every one of you makes all of this possible. Because I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's only possible for me to do this sort of reporting because I do not rely on advertising at all, right? I just simply don't. This is all funded entirely by subscriptions from nerds like you, which means I am not beholden to big tech. Unlike every single other major tech news outlet out there, I am not beholden to big tech. That includes YouTubers, for heaven's sake. YouTubers who make their money off of ads, they're beholden to YouTube and Google and big tech and ad money. I am not. While I will publish some of my shows to YouTube, that represents like 5% of my viewers and my audience level. I could delete the YouTube account today and I won't even notice it. So this is a unique thing that we have going here with the Lunduke Journal. And it's really thanks to all of you. So go support the show, go support the articles and the journalism that we do. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.